Maybe you're not broken. Maybe you're just in the process of being reborn. But what if I told you that there are invisible energies that are slowly destroying your soul? Have you ever felt like you were living by inertia, smiling on the outside, but falling apart inside? Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." But what if you're running away from that light? What if, instead of healing, you are feeding without realizing it? The energies that take you away from your essence. There is a pain that doesn't scream, a pain that doesn't bleed. It hides in the details, in the silences, in the gestures you repeat without understanding why. This pain has a name. It is made of 6 silent forces that operate in the shadows of your soul. They don't arrive as monsters. They whisper. They disguise themselves as love, as need, as routine. And the most dangerous? They become part of who you think you are. Have you ever wondered why you feel so emotionally exhausted, even when it seems like everything is fine? Why, despite doing everything right, do you carry this feeling that something essential is missing? Maybe it's not you. Maybe these are the 6 spiritual energies that are draining your soul every day without you realizing it. And this video, it's not about giving you ready-made answers. It's about remind you of who you were before the world taught you to be silent. You feel like you are struggling to hold on to something that has already left you empty? What is begging for emotional crumbs when in fact your soul asks for freedom? You're tired of surviving, when what you really want, deep down, is live with truth. So stay with me, because in the next few minutes, we're going to unmask the 6 energies that break your soul. Let's name each one, and understand why they set in, and how you can begin to break free. But be careful. This video, it's not light. It was made for those who are ready to look within, for those who are tired of pretending, for those who are ready to tear away the skin of the ego and touch the raw truth of the soul. Are you ready for this? Because the next revelation might hurt, but it can also be the beginning of your liberation. So I want to invite you now to take a conscious pause. Comment below. I want to see what breaks my soul. Yes, right. Because when you take a stand, even in a comment, you begin to take your soul out of invisibility. And if something here has already started to touch you, leave yours like. This helps spread this message to other souls who are also passing away in silence. And if you feel like you need more messages like this, deep spiritual healing, subscribe to the channel now. Not because it's a YouTube ritual, but because here, each video is a healing whisper, a conversation with your soul, and a truth that perhaps you haven't yet allowed yourself to feel. The journey is just beginning. Next, you will learn, one by one, about the 6 energies that silently break your soul. And the first one might be exactly what you're carrying today. Do you feel like you're slowly losing parts of yourself without knowing exactly why? Maybe it's not just fatigue. Maybe your soul is being silently drained. There's an exhaustion that doesn't come from the body. It's a weight that can't be resolved with physical rest, a vacation, or more sleep. It's the kind of exhaustion that accompanies you even in quiet moments, when there's no external noise. But what screams is the inner emptiness. This feeling of emptiness, of disconnection from yourself, is often invisible even to you. But it's there, taking up space, dimming the sparkle in your eyes. It steals your presence, transforming you into someone who watches life pass by, unable to truly feel part of it. This pain doesn't show up on tests, nor does it become a topic of everyday conversation, but it shapes your thoughts. It makes you wonder if everything is wrong with you. And that's where the invisible problem lies. It's subtle, but constant. You keep living, smiling, working, caring for others, while your soul silently cries out for help, and no one sees. There's a wound that doesn't bleed, an absence that has no name. You wake up already tired, already without desire. And when you look in the mirror, you don't always recognize the woman you see. It's as if time has passed, roles have accumulated, mother, daughter, partner, professional, and amidst it all, your essence has been silenced. Not because you wanted it to be, but because that's what you were taught, to nullify yourself, to fit in, to be good, to be strong, to not bother. But being too strong for too long also breaks you. And this breaking isn't loud. It's like water slowly seeping through the cracks of a house. At first, almost imperceptible. But one day, everything gives way. Because the soul, when unheard, implodes. Rumi said, "You have to keep breaking your heart until it opens." But what happens when you don't even know where your heart is anymore? When what you feel is a mixture of apathy and a desperate desire to escape from it all? When, even surrounded by people, you feel invisible? These are the cracks that herald the invisible problem. They are signs that something much deeper is going on, something spiritual, something that can't be resolved with ready-made phrases or miracle formulas. What's at stake here is your soul, and it's crying out for truth, for reconnection, for healing. Maybe you're giving too much of yourself to someone who doesn't know what reciprocity means. Maybe you're living in constant emotional vigilance, trying never to seem too much, never to be intense, never to show that you're feeling anything. But all this restraint comes at a cost, and that cost is you. You might even think, "But I chose this." And maybe you did. But was it a free choice? Or was it the only path you saw in a world that taught you to adapt to survive? The truth is that there are forces operating in the shadows of your psyche. These are emotional and spiritual patterns you internalized, often as a child. Distorted lessons about love, about worthiness, about what it means to be seen, accepted, and valued. And these forces, these energies, continue to operate even if you don't realize it. They make you repeat the same cycles. Relationships that drain you. Friendships that only exist when you're feeling well. Environments where you have to hide who you are to be tolerated. And every small denial of your truth shatters a piece of your soul. Not all at once, but day after day. And maybe that's why you've gotten used to not expecting anything anymore. To not creating expectations. To not asking for help. To smiling while you're falling apart inside. Maybe you've learned to normalize pain. To call maturity what, in reality, is surrender in disguise. But there's something inside you that still beats. An echo of what you were before you lost yourself. A small but insistent voice that says, "You deserve better." And it's that voice that brought you here. Because somewhere inside you, you know it can't go on like this. You know life can't be just this. You know there's something more, even if you can't name it yet. And that's why we need to talk about the energies that break you. Because until you acknowledge them, they continue to act. They continue to weaken your soul. They continue to distance you from who you were born to be. And make no mistake, these energies aren't distant ghosts. They're in your recurring thoughts, in the patterns that repeat themselves, in the decisions you make out of fear, not love. They're where you feel guilty for setting boundaries, where you feel wrong for needing space, where you judge yourself for feeling. Now, you might be asking yourself, how did I let this happen? But that's the wrong question. The right question is, how do I start remembering who I am? And that's why this video exists, to guide you back, so you can see, name, understand, and only then begin to let go. If you felt that this text spoke to some forgotten part of you, comment below. I refuse to remain invisible. This phrase can be the first step in making your soul heard. The soul doesn't break all at once. It fragments little by little, every time you accept less than you deserve. Fragment by fragment, you lose touch with who you truly are. And you don't even realize it. You begin to accept relationships where you have to diminish yourself to fit in. Environments where you have to be silent to be tolerated. Cycles where you have to be strong all the time because no one offers to hold you. This isn't the life your soul wanted to live, but it's become the life you've learned to endure. And enduring too much, for too long, comes at a price. That price is called spiritual oblivion. You haven't just forgotten what you love, you've forgotten who you are. Rumi said, "You're born with wings, why do you prefer to crawl through life?" And that's not a criticism, it's a revelation. Because the crawling here isn't literal, it's emotional, it's spiritual. It's the state of someone who's living far below their own light, of someone who's grown accustomed to walking hunched over in the face of pain, thinking that standing up too much will bother them. And it will. Your light will bother those who feed on your shadow. And that's why you've been taught to keep that light dimmed, to hide your desires, to pretend you don't feel, to camouflage your intuition with logical justifications. But the soul isn't content with that for long. Every energy that breaks you is actually an absence of the sacred, a distancing from your inner truth. It's like a dense fog that spreads and prevents you from seeing clearly what truly matters. You begin to forget what you deserve. You begin to accept crumbs and call it love. You begin to stay where you left just so you don't have to face the emptiness. You begin to call survival maturity, but deep down, something inside you screams. A dull ache, a heavy silence, a discomfort that won't go away. This isn't weakness. This is your soul trying to awaken. There comes a time when the body continues to function, but the spirit has already departed. And that's when you start living on autopilot. You wake up, accomplish tasks, interact, but you don't feel. You're there, but not present. You're alive, but disconnected. This disconnection is the root of almost all the emotional pain you feel. Because when you're far from your inner truth, everything around you becomes noise. And amidst this noise, you try to find yourself. You try to meditate. You try to distract yourself. You try to heal. But how do you heal something you don't yet know how to name? The first step is to recognize that what breaks you isn't just the actions of others. It's the spaces you allow those actions to occupy within you. It's the energy of self-abandonment, of undigested guilt, of rejection you've internalized as if it were your own fault. It's the energy of forced silence, of clinging to narratives that have hurt you too much, of escaping the emptiness that insists on visiting you in the wee hours. None of these energies arrives announcing destruction. They disguise themselves as need, affection, obligation, but behind the masks, they are forces that pull you away from your sacred axis. You're not lost. You're distant, far from yourself, from your soul, from your origins. The spiritual root of your pain isn't something external. It's in the way you've learned to see yourself, how you've learned to treat yourself, how you stopped listening to yourself in order to be heard by others. The soul, when not welcomed, begins to seek refuge in illusions, and that's when you become trapped in toxic relationships, repetitive patterns, and emotional addictions, because you prefer the painful known to the liberating unknown. But there is a turning point. It begins with awareness. When you begin to courageously look at what you've been avoiding for years, when you stop justifying what hurts you, when you choose the discomfort of truth over the safety of illusion. This point is sacred, because it is there that the soul begins to remember its strength, its purpose, its essence before it was shaped by pain. And don't think it's easy, because remembering hurts. Spiritual memory doesn't come gently. It comes as a loud whisper, an urgent call, a discomfort that can no longer be ignored. You begin to realize that living in fear of rejection is rejecting yourself every day, that staying where there's no reciprocity is a slow form of emotional suicide, and that denying your intuition is living with a suffocated soul. Rumi said, "What you seek is seeking you, but how can you find what seeks you if you're always running away from yourself?" This is the point where many people give up, because awakening requires going through the pain. It requires looking within with brutal honesty. But it's also at this point that healing begins to take shape, not as an instant miracle, but as a thin thread of reconnection, a thread that pulls you back to your truth, to your center, to the inner space where the peace the world cannot steal resides. And if something inside you is reacting now, if some part of you is moving, even silently, perhaps it's your soul beginning to remember who it is. Because before you can soar, you must recognize your currents. Before you can flourish, you must face your roots. And now that you've begun to look at this spiritual root, the next revelation will be inevitable. It will show you clearly how these energies manifest, and why recognizing this is the first step to feeling alive again. If you feel like this touched on something you couldn't put into words anymore, comment here. I'm ready to remember who I am. Because this small gesture could be the beginning of the reconnection your soul so desperately needs. What no one told you is that these 6 energies don't appear like monsters. They don't scream. They don't knock on the door. They don't warn you they're coming in. They simply settle in, and before you know it, you're already living for them. They're invisible, silent patterns that camouflage themselves as personality traits, when in reality they're walls you built to protect yourself, and that now imprison you. These 6 energies don't shatter your soul all at once. They corrode, slowly, like a poison that mingles with the blood of your routine. The cruelest part? You don't even know you're trapped, because these energies have been normalized, disguised as love, effort, empathy, strength. But love that demands you deny yourself isn't love. Empathy that asks you to be silent isn't empathy. Strength that only survives on pain isn't strength. It's resistance that makes you sick. And that's why we need to speak clearly about each of these forces, because you only free yourself from what you name. You only transform yourself from what you acknowledge. It's not pain that destroys you. It's denying it. The first energy is self-abandonment, perhaps the most silent of all. You abandon yourself every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you put someone else first, not out of love but out of fear of rejection, every time you remain silent to maintain external peace while there is war within. Self-abandonment is an internal betrayal, and it disguises itself as generosity, understanding, maturity. But deep down, it's just a reflection of your difficulty seeing yourself as a priority. What you feel matters. What you desire is sacred. When you ignore yourself, your soul becomes silent. The second energy is unprocessed guilt, that subtle feeling that you don't deserve to be happy, that if something went well, something bad must follow, that perhaps you did something wrong to be abandoned, rejected, replaced. This guilt stems from old stories, from traumas you didn't have time to process, and it makes you sabotage yourself, choose less, settle for less. Because deep down, there's a belief, I am the problem. But unprocessed guilt becomes a burden the soul carries, even when the body is already smiling. It saps the lightness, and to free yourself from it, you need to allow yourself to look at what was, with compassion, not judgment. The third energy is internalized rejection, the feeling of constant inadequacy, that no matter what you do, you're never enough. You're never pretty enough, interesting enough, calm enough, strong enough. It's that inner voice that constantly corrects you, that judges you, that compares your trajectory to others and always puts you behind. This voice often isn't yours. It's the voice of someone you listened to too often and believed. It's the mark rejection left within you. And the problem wasn't being rejected. The problem is believing that this defines your worth. The fourth energy is forced silence. When you stop expressing your feelings to avoid conflict, when you swallow tears to avoid appearing weak, when you hide your pain to avoid disturbing others. Forced silence slowly kills, because the soul needs expression. It doesn't want to scream, but it also doesn't want to be silent. It wants to be heard. Every time you remain silent to maintain relationships, you distance yourself. And the price is high, because there comes a time when you can no longer differentiate what you feel from what you pretend to feel. The fifth energy is attachment to what's already over. Relationships you insist on holding on to, even after your soul has departed. Stories you relive mentally every day, as if there were still something to be resolved. Clinging to what's gone is like trying to hold on to smoke. Your hands are full, but empty, and deep down, you know it no longer feeds you. But the fear of loss is greater than the desire to start over, and that's why you stay. Even though you're unhappy, even though you're alone in the relationship, even though you know you left a long time ago. And the sixth energy is the escape from the void. This is perhaps the most common pattern. You're constantly busy. You fill your calendar, turn on the TV, scroll through social media, invent tasks, all so you don't feel, because feeling scares you. Silence confronts you, and the void reminds you of what hasn't yet healed. But the soul doesn't fear the void. It just wants space to reorganize itself. To escape the void is to escape from yourself. And the more you run, the more tired you become, until the moment you need to stop. And look, these are the 6 energies that break your soul. They are not enemies. They are signs, invitations, calls. They say, look within. They say, the time has come to remember. No transformation begins outside. True liberation is internal. It begins when you choose, for the first time in a long time, not to abandon yourself, not to be silent, not to diminish yourself. And perhaps that moment is now. If something inside you recognizes these energies, comment here. I choose to free myself. This simple act can be the beginning of your reconnection, because when you name your pain, you begin to transform it. Maybe today, you're in a relationship where you feel you need to hide to be loved, where you've learned, without anyone saying it in words, that your brilliance is frightening, that your intensity is too much, that your emotions are uncomfortable. Maybe you've adjusted your tone of voice, your gestures, your desires. Maybe you've stopped talking about what hurts you, and you've started to accept little affection, little presence, little gaze, little truth. just so as not to lose what little remains. But what destroys you most isn't the other person. It's not seeing yourself when you look in the mirror. It's realizing that the woman you once were, free, whole, courageous, was silenced somewhere along the way. And now, when you try to remember who you were, you can't find the words, only feelings, longing for yourself, anguish at having left yourself aside, sadness at no longer knowing what you want, because for so long, you've dedicated yourself to supporting others, that you've forgotten to support yourself. Maybe you've grown accustomed to a love that demands effort, that doesn't flow, that needs to be earned every day, as if loving yourself were a chore, as if you always needed to prove your worth, justify yourself, mold yourself. Maybe the fear of being alone was greater than the desire to be true, and that's why you stayed, even though you felt like you were losing something, even though you realized you were moving away from your essence. Maybe you're living a story that's already over, but you haven't had the courage to acknowledge it, because admitting the end is facing grief. It's making room for emptiness, and emptiness is frightening, because it confronts you with everything you've postponed, the pain you didn't want to feel, the truths you didn't want to face. So you remain, even unhappy, even invisible, even disconnected, because somehow this suffering has become familiar. It's become routine. And the most dangerous part is that you start to think the problem is you, that you feel too much, that you demand too much, that you demand too much. But is it really demanding? Or is it just the legitimate desire to be seen, heard, loved with presence and depth? Are you asking for too much? Or have you gotten used to too little for so long that enough seems like too much? When you look in the mirror and no longer recognize yourself, it's not vanity, it's spiritual pain. It's the absence of your soul within your own life. And this absence screams. It screams in the form of insomnia, anxiety, discouragement, silent crises that no one sees. It screams in the difficulty of making decisions, in the constant feeling of inadequacy, in the need to seek validation everywhere, except within yourself. But maybe you still remember, subtly, in small moments, in a book that touched you, in a song that made you cry, in a conversation where for a moment you felt like you'd returned home. Not your physical home, but your inner home, the one you left behind when you began to adapt. These small moments are traces of your essence. They are signs that it's still there, waiting for you to return. You don't have to keep hiding. You don't have to keep believing that love demands silence. True love embraces. It expands. It invites you to be more of yourself, not less. And if what you're experiencing today requires you to shut yourself away, perhaps what you call love is actually a mirror of your own disconnection. What you feel is real. What you need is legitimate. And what your soul screams isn't drama. It's stifled truth. It's light-seeking space. It's inner wisdom asking to be heard. And ignoring that voice won't save you. It will only keep you prisoner to a life that isn't yours. Waking up to this is painful. It's like removing a veil you've worn for so long it feels like a part of your face. But it's also the first step toward coming back to yourself, to begin looking at yourself with compassion, to stop emotionally abusing yourself in the name of a story that only leaves you empty. You deserve to be whole, not half. You deserve peace, not survival. You deserve a space where you can be who you are, without fear, without filters, without performance. And this space begins within you. It begins when you decide that you will no longer trade your soul for the presence of others, that you will no longer diminish yourself to fit into relationships that shrink you, that you will no longer remain silent to maintain what already breaks you. Maybe, right now, you're going through the same cycle again, the same feeling of being invisible, the same emotional turmoil, the same attempt to fix something that isn't yours to fix. And maybe that's exactly the pain. Realizing you always end up back in the same place even though you try so hard to change. But now, something in you has already changed. Because you've begun to see, you've begun to feel, you've begun to name. And when the truth is seen, it can no longer be ignored. It begins to act. It begins to dissolve illusion. It begins to pave the way for healing. If something within you recognized itself in this text, comment here. I will no longer hide to be loved. Writing this is more than just a comment. It's declaring to the universe, and to yourself, that you choose to return. Return to yourself. Return to your soul. Return to the love that begins within. You're not broken. You're awakening. And awakening, though it sounds beautiful when spoken aloud, hurts, because it requires looking at everything you've ignored for too long. Awakening is facing the mess left behind when you tried to be what others expected. It's facing the emptiness that appeared when you said yes to others, but didn't hear your own no. It's looking in the mirror with sincerity and admitting, I lost myself trying to be accepted. But the fact that you're here now, feeling, reflecting, breathing deeply with each word, is already a sign. The soul doesn't present itself this way by chance. It appears when it realizes that, finally, you're ready to listen. This is the turning point, that subtle point between collapse and clarity, between pain and lucidity. And no, it's not magical. It's real. It's profound. And it's transformative. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need the courage not to run away from yourself. Because awakening doesn't happen when the pain disappears. It happens when you stop protecting yourself from it and start listening to it. When you stop running and start staying. When you decide you're no longer going to survive but to live. With presence, with truth, with soul. Rumi said, don't settle for stories of how things happen to others. Awaken your own legend. And perhaps you've spent your entire life drawing inspiration from others, comparing yourself to lives that aren't yours, trying to live up to standards designed by someone who doesn't know your pain. But what if your story is precisely the one most needed right now? What if, instead of trying to fit in, you decided to expand? What if, instead of trying to fit in, you made space for yourself? Your legend is unlike anyone else's. It begins where you were broken, at the exact moment when all seemed lost. That's where the seed of your truth lies, because you only awaken when something inside you can no longer pretend. And no matter how much it still hurts, how much fear, insecurity, uncertainty still lingers, something new is being born, something that pulses within, that shines, even if still overshadowed by scars. This shift in consciousness doesn't require perfection. It requires presence. And presence is being with all that's within you, the beautiful parts and the parts you hide. It's looking at your vulnerability with respect. It's embracing your sensitivity as strength. It's stopping apologizing for feeling too much. Because those who feel deeply also love deeply, heal deeply, and transform deeply. And that's what the world needs. People who feel with an awakened soul. You're not weak for being broken. You're strong for still being here. For being willing to rebuild. For allowing the pain to reveal what needs healing. The turning point comes when you understand that it's not the pain that defines you. It's what you do with it. You can keep reliving the same stories. Or you can write a new one. One where you're not the one begging, but the one choosing. One where you're not the one enduring, but the one honoring yourself. One where you stop waiting to be saved, and start saving yourself. And saving yourself doesn't mean always being well. It means stopping abandoning yourself. It means stopping ignoring your limits. It means stopping masking your sadness. It means accepting less than you know you deserve. It means saying yes to yourself with the same conviction you've always said yes to others. It means prioritizing yourself, not out of selfishness, but out of spiritual wisdom. Because a soul that loves itself becomes a beacon, a reminder to the world that it is possible to live with the truth, even when everything around you insists on lies. Your pain has meaning. It's the beginning of the call, the space where something new wants to be born, and you don't need to be afraid of it anymore. It can hurt, yes, but it can also free you. And if you keep running away, you'll keep getting lost. But if you have the courage to stay, you'll begin, little by little, to find yourself. With every tear that fell unnoticed, every silence you swallowed to maintain a relationship, every moment you felt no one saw you, all of this is now being redefined. All of this is serving as a foundation for your awakening, not as an empty promise, but as a spiritual recognition. Because your soul knew this moment would come, the moment you would stop seeking external approval and begin to listen to your inner calling. The moment you would stop being silent and begin to assert yourself. The moment you would stop repeating other people's stories and begin to write your own legend. And if until now you doubted yourself, doubted your worth, your strength, your light, perhaps all of this was part of the process. Because it is in the darkness that the soul learns to light its own flame. And now that it has begun to shine, nothing can extinguish it. Nothing can make you crawl again. because you have already tasted freedom. And even though there may still be fear, courage has already begun to blossom. If you felt this in your body, if something vibrated differently in you, comment here, "I'm ready to awaken my legend." Because this is the kind of truth that needs to be spoken out loud. Because sometimes what starts as a simple comment is actually the first step on a new path. You've made it this far. That says a lot about you. It means that even in silence, even in fear, even in doubt, there's a soul within you that wants to be heard. And more than that, a soul ready to remember who it is. You are not the pain. You are the one who survived it. If this video spoke to you, if at any point you saw yourself in the words, if you felt something opening up inside, then this journey cannot stop here. There is so much more to be revealed, felt, remembered. So subscribe to the channel now. Because here, each video is a mirror of your soul, a gentle and sometimes brutal reminder that you are not alone. Leave a like if this really touched you. It's not just a button, it's a symbolic gesture that this message needs to reach more people who are also trying to find their feet amidst the chaos. Stay with me. The next video is already appearing on your screen. Watch it. It's the natural continuation of this moment, because your journey isn't over. It's just beginning, and your soul knows it.